Hey everybody, this is Dr. Mark Jesinoski. This is the Wizard Podcast, episode 13. It is January 29th, 2020. I just finished another week of private practice. It's Wednesday night, so I'm unwinding a little bit. I'm going to spend the next few days making art, working on different projects. I try to balance my time between my work as a psychologist, 3 days a week in private practice, and the other 3 or 4 getting to work, getting to make art, getting to create, getting to be in that space. And sometimes I don't do that. Sometimes I do this. Sometimes I do some other things. And it's really just a time that's meant to allow room for inspiration and room for creation and room for working on art. And I do believe, I've come to believe that we are all made to create. That whether you believe it this way or not, if you believe that you're created in the image of God, that you are the essence of one consciousness that pervades the universe, that you are capable of creation. You can imagine things. You can turn that imagination into real things you can hold. You can create with emotion. You can create with thought. You can create with spirit. You can create a physical thing that you can dream up in your head. So we can create all kinds of things. We're creating our life every day. You create your life by how you choose to relate to the world around you, by how you choose to relate to yourself, by how you choose to relate to the world around you. And something I really noticed this week, I'm sniffling here. It's 57 degrees in Fallbrook, California. Getting cold in these parts. I'm laughing because I'm from Battle Lake, Minnesota, where it's probably super cold right now. So I noticed this week that how many people I see, how many people I work with, and how many people I know, and myself included at times, who believe they have something wrong with them because their emotions are going up and down, or because you experience a lot of pain, or you experience a lot of sadness, or you experience a sense of powerlessness, or you can't leave the home without feeling anxiety in your body. And it's sad to me how many people think that something is wrong and we need to fix it. Something is wrong and I need to make it go away. And I try to tell them that nothing is wrong. Your body is just doing what it has learned to do in the context of the emotional story of your life. That the emotions you're experiencing are not actually a problem per se in and of themselves. That the emotions are telling you something, that there is wisdom in those emotions. The emotions are telling you where you hurt. The emotions are telling you how you tell the story of your life. There are wisdom in them, their emotions. And I think sometimes the trick is learning how to observe your emotions and how to start unraveling the story of your life, and how to start understanding which of the sensations in your body are correct knowledge, let's say, correct information. Which of them have been calibrated in attunement with the world and the people and everything around us. How many of our emotions are correct? In other words, how many of our emotions are responding automatically to a set of circumstances in a way that's actually useful or helpful or full of good intuition? And understanding what of our emotional responses, what of the sensations in our body are actually just false alarms. They're just false alarms going off over and over and over again to a programmed story that we have been telling ourselves for a long, long time. Once upon a time, you didn't have language. Once upon a time, you just had sensations in your body and you had feelings. And when you felt a certain way, you would cry out a certain way. And those sensations started to form memories. You experience those sensations in the moment as forms of information. They are forms of data. It's literally a communication happening within that is intended to alert you to something. If it were correct, you would trust it. You would trust your intuition. If it were honed correctly by wise people and loving people, then our emotional system would be, you could say, perfect. You could say it, and I don't mean perfection. I don't mean to overcompensate in that way. I'm just saying it would be honed in such a way that you would trust your gut. You would trust your intuition. You wouldn't be second guessing yourself. You wouldn't be hesitating. You wouldn't be avoiding, because you would trust yourself. But we start telling that story. We have those sensations in our body and those feelings, and we start attaching words. We put our memories together in a sequence that we call a story, and it starts to build upon itself. It starts to elaborate itself. It starts to become biased in accordance with attachments that we make. So we make attachments. Some of those attachments are love. They're good things in our life. They're the parts of our life that make meaning in our life. Some of those attachments are not so good. They're hurtful. They weigh you down. They bog you down. They hurt you. They keep you afraid. It's like a life raft when you need to let go. So this story started to be told, and that story wrapped itself around attachments. That story started to become part of the way our body responds sensationally to the world around us automatically. So stuff happens, and it instigates emotions in our body, pulses in our body automatically based on our perception of whatever that trigger meant to the story in our mind and our body. It happens automatically. I believe, I can't say I'm correct on this, but I read somewhere that it's about 200 milliseconds, that boom, that response. You perceive something, and your brain, theoretically your limbic brain, your thalamus, determines where that thing should go, where that signal should go, where that experience should go in the brain, just like that. And boom, if the right set of factors emerge, if the right algorithm is triggered, you will experience a sensation in your body that makes you feel anxious, that makes you feel sad, that makes you feel scared, that makes you react in such a way as to bring your attention to something. Boy, I really am snotty tonight. And the attention that is brought forward is full of good wisdom and good information, but it has become so filtered and so intertwined and so tainted by the interaction of bias, by the interaction of culture, by the interaction of propaganda, you could say. So rather than listening to our emotions, rather than being taught that our emotions are sources of wisdom that help us to unravel the story of our life and help us to automatically respond to the world around us in a way that is full of intuition and wisdom, we turn them into symptoms. We turn them into problems that need to go away. So what happens? We start to experience negative emotions. We start to experience sadness, fear, anxiety, depression, whatever. And rather than saying, oh, I'm feeling scared of something, I'm feeling powerless, I wonder what it is that I'm feeling powerless to, I wonder what story I'm telling myself. Rather than being afraid and uncomfortable in the body, we can listen to that body and it can help tell us a story. We can become more wise to how we see the world. We can see the world maybe more clearly. But we're told by a lot of authority figures in our culture that if you feel those things, you should consult a doctor. If you feel those things, we have a pill for it. If you feel those things, maybe you need to make it go away. And I can tell you from working with a lot of people over many years that more often than not, you can learn to listen to your emotions and you can learn to derive wisdom from them. And when you stop labeling them as a source of hurt, if you stop labeling them as a source of injury, if you stop trying to make them go away because they feel uncomfortable, ironically, if you fully accept them and look at them and listen to them objectively, rather than going, I need to get away from that, that hurts, it's got to go away, just say, okay, what are you telling me, body? Let's look at this story. Let's observe it. Let's feel it. Let's accept it. We don't have to believe it. That's part of the task at hand, is to understand what part of this is wisdom, what part of this is correct, what part of this is based in bad information, what part of this is based in the programming of trauma and the programming of family and the programming of culture. In some ways, we all have to understand that in a lot of ways, we're all biased. We're all biased based upon our unique idiosyncratic programming, our own unique life experiences, how we have selectively attended to the world around us. Now that's amazing. If you think about it, we're all incredibly unique. We're all looking at the world slightly differently. Wouldn't it be cool if we were all really, really curious about the way we all see the world and we understood there is a lot of wisdom in those emotions? There's a lot of wisdom in those stories, but what do? We turn them into symptoms, we turn them into problems, we turn them into diseases. We flush this amazing wisdom down the toilet. We got an insurance code for it. Can bill you for it. Now you got my depression and my anxiety and my medication. And I'm not criticizing not one of you, because I understand how the system works. I understand what's given to us. I understand if you say certain things are just going to naturally come to you. And what are you supposed to do? These are the so-called shamans of our culture in some ways, these authority figures that dole out pills. Wow. So I've just been noticing and feeling compassion for people who think something is wrong with them, who think they are depressed in a way that something is wrong with them, or anxious in a way that something's wrong with them, or fearful or whatever, rather than, no. Your emotions are telling you something about the way you're perceiving your life. They may be saying, hey, I am not fulfilled in my work. I am not fulfilled in my marriage. I'm not fulfilled in this place of my life. I don't like the way I feel. I don't like the toxicity around me. And your emotions are saying, I feel powerless. I feel powerless. I need to get away. And that's what we call depression. Really, it's, I feel powerless. I need to get away. I feel hopeless. I need an escape. What if you listen to that? If you listen to that, it means you'd have to challenge your attachments. You'd have to start letting go of some things. You'd have to start working through some things. You might have to redefine who you are. You might have to let go of big parts of your ego, which can be incredibly, incredibly healing. So, think about the story you're telling yourself. Notice the story you're telling yourself. What is influencing it? What are those voices in your head that are telling you you're sick, or you're not healthy, or something's wrong with you, or you have some disorder? What if you changed the language? What if you changed the perception? What if you just got rid of the language and just observed what you feel Just notice it as a sensation in your body. Close your eyes and notice the sensations in your body and accept them even if they feel sad or even if they feel scary. They're helping to tell you a story. The other side of that story is, rather than, let's say, feeling depression, and that gives you some good knowledge or wisdom about how you perceive your job, well, what if you experience painful emotions and you experience sadness and anxiety, powerlessness, and those emotions are being triggered by your attachment to ideas and your perception of the world around you. So you're being fearful because you don't want to do a job interview, or you're fearful because you don't want to go out and talk with people in public. And that's okay. That's just what you've learned in your body. That's what you've learned in your mind. You've learned that if you avoid, you'll be more safe than if you're exposed. That's a logical conclusion that supports anxiety. But what if you start listening to these emotions and deciding, rather than reacting to the perceived fear in a way that leads you to move away, which ironically reinforces that fear and brings more to you, what if you listen to your anxiety, notice what you're fearful of, and actually move toward that fear? Build your muscles along the way, move toward it. Recognize the illusion of the fear. Most things we are fearful of are an illusion. They're the interaction of the perception of danger by the amygdala, which is part of the limbic brain, theoretically here, but pretty good science, and the interaction of our perception of danger with ideas and beliefs. There's a guy named Joseph Ledoux, I believe, he's a neuroscientist of some sort, and I think he's an expert on the amygdala. So we start telling ourselves this story, and we start reacting, and we start experiencing anxiety and depression. We start reacting to that, and we get lost in it, and it reinforces itself, and it influences the way that we see the world. And then we just start kind of having this perpetual experience of depression, or this perpetual experience of anxiety. And sorry, I gotta check something here. I'm not tech savvy, that's for sure. So to unravel that story, just understand that, what would it be like to take a step back and just look at your feelings as sensations? You don't even have to label them as anxiety or depression. If that helps to contextualize them, that's okay. But what it would be like to just look at them as sources of information that are telling you about your life, and what would it be like to start making a plan for how to move toward these things that make you feel powerless, how to surrender to the things you feel powerless to, and how to become very strong in the places where you can act, where you can move toward the fear. That's an action. And you can recognize the illusion of the fear, and you can learn to master whatever it is that you are fearful of, simply by exposing yourself to it in such a way that you move toward it. And as you move toward it and you tolerate it and you breathe and you show yourself that you can work on it, you accept it along the way, you can build those muscles and become very strong. And in those places where you are powerless, where you genuinely are limited, we all have, frames around our life in some way, then you radically accept that. You surrender to it. You become quiet and calm and humble, and you surrender to that. And then you start looking at your life more objectively in the moment. Start being very accepting of those things that keep bogging you down, you feel powerless to. Just accept them, put them over here, focus in on what it is you can take an action on what you can do something about, and then move on it. And if you get scared, take a breath. And you can do this. Anybody that's struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, anxiety, this is how it works, man. This is really, Learn to listen to those emotions, learn to observe them, learn to just take a step back and notice the story that they're telling you. Maybe observe it, maybe write it down, maybe express it in art. Maybe tell it to a friend, maybe tell it to a therapist. And then look at those emotions, listen to those emotions, feel those emotions, accept them, help them understand the story you're telling yourself. Start to unravel that story. Go back to the beginning, have a beginner's mind. Be like that child that just had the sensations and the observations and didn't really have a language for it yet. And then you'll feel more inspired and creative, and you'll want to create things, and you want to have nice conversations, you want to have dinners with people. You just want to do nice stuff. You want to dance, you want to move your body. You know, my dad, I love my dad, Stan. He's in Minnesota, and I'm so proud of him, how he's been learning and growing even at this stage of his life. This place of his life, he's doing a lot of reflecting and a lot of growing, and through a lot of stuff, taking ownership for a lot of stuff, and also growing through a lot of stuff. But he was reading a book on PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, recently, and he texted me and he said something like, do you know if you move your body and dance, it's almost impossible to be angry, or something like that. If you move your body and dance, it's almost impossible to feel negative. and I know about movement therapy and dance therapy, and they do it with veterans at the Intrepid Centers for Excellence, I believe they're called. They do it at Walter Reed. But I had never really just thought of it pragmatically for myself. And so it's funny, my dad taught me something, and this is, I don't know, a few months ago or whatever, but I started really playing with it when I'm painting. And, you know, I'm in my backyard. I built this big wall in my backyard, and I paint in the backyard. Sometimes, paint in the garage, whatever. And so I'm usually playing music, so I'm just painting and dancing and moving and feeling it and noticing that it's pretty impossible to be angry or depressed if you're moving. If you're just moving your body, try it. Forget all the psychobabble I talked about. Just move your body, move it honestly, flex it, relax it. It's almost impossible to be anxious when you open your arms up like this, because you would never do that if a lion was about to attack, would you? You'd go like this in a defensive posture, in a guard posture. When you open up, it's freeing. So if you're ever about to have a panic attack, if you're ever having anxious feelings, if your heart's ever really tight, open up. Another little trick I learned watching an Olympic speed skater, I think that Ono, he was something like that. He was a really great speed skater, and he had a bunch of gold medals. But I remember watching him before one of his gold medal races, and he kept yawning. He's like literally about to go for a gold medal, and he's like, just these like deep, profound yawns. And I'm like, what is that guy doing? And so I just started playing with it, and I realized that it's almost impossible to be anxious when you're yawning. And I believe what he was doing was a technique. I think he was actually calming himself before this gold medal race, just by, if you really do it, you really mean it, and you really feel it, it's pretty damn impossible to feel anxious in that moment. That's a bit of relief. And then you open up and start moving and start giving yourself permission to be free. I don't know, man. Do what you love. Hope you have a wonderful night. Thanks for listening. This is Dr. Mark Jesinoski. This is the Wizard Podcast, episode 13. Take care.